The week before my wedding, my future in-laws took my fiancé on a family trip. When he came back, he was distant and said, "I think we should take a break." I just smiled, handed him an envelope, and said, "Funny, because I just found out something about that trip." When he read it, he looked at his parents with pure rage. Have you ever loved someone so much you couldn't see the betrayal, even as it caressed your face? Lucretia was 32 and believed she was standing at the threshold of her most sacred dream, marrying the man she had chosen from the depths of her soul. To many, Adam was perfect. A well-known architect, son of a wealthy family, charming in public with that exact smile that dazzled at gatherings, but behind closed doors, he grew increasingly distant. Lucretia, however, wasn't naive. She had learned how to read silences, to listen between the lines, to decode what wasn't said. She lived in Savannah, Georgia, in a small red brick apartment that smelled of lavender and coffee. She was an interior designer, a woman who had built her career from the ground up, no favors, no inheritance. A woman who had everything except her fiancé's family's acceptance. The wedding was just 7 days away. The centerpieces were confirmed. The dress hung like a white promise in the closet, and excited messages from family members kept flooding in. Everything seemed perfect. Until Roberta called. "Adam needs a little breather before the big day," Roberta said over the phone, not even bothering with a greeting. Her voice was polite, cold as porcelain, laced with silent contempt. "We've decided to take him to Miami. Just a few days. Nothing more." Lucretia held the phone to her ear in silence. Her hands trembled slightly. From the very beginning, Roberta had looked at her as if weighing whether she was worth the effort of getting to know. And Walter, Adam's father, barely spoke, unless it was to brag about business or complain about what he called the moral collapse of today's youth. "Miami," she finally asked, biting back her bitterness. "A week before the wedding? Stress is bad for everyone, dear. And you, more than anyone, should know that. We don't want a groom collapsing at the altar, do we?" Lucretia hung up without saying goodbye. Adam came home that night with his usual cautious smile, like he already knew he'd have to smooth things over. "It's just 3 days," he said, tossing his jacket over the back of the couch. "My mom insisted. You know how she is." "Yes, I know exactly how she is. Manipulative. Controlling. Classist." She didn't sugarcoat it. He frowned but didn't interrupt. "And you? Did you want to go too?" Adam stepped closer and wrapped his arms around her waist. His hands were cold. "I thought it might be good to disconnect for a bit. We've been planning this for months." "I don't want to walk into it with my head spinning." Lucretia said nothing. She wanted to scream that it was absurd. No one goes on a family trip days before their wedding. But she swallowed her words, forced herself to trust, to believe that love, the one she fought for tooth and nail, still lived in him. Adam left Thursday morning. He didn't even have breakfast. Just walked out with a small suitcase and a kiss on the cheek. No hug. No lingering look. No words like, "I'll miss you." Just a door closing, and a silence that landed like a weight on Lucretia's chest. That Thursday, she kept herself busy. Tweaked details with the florist, reviewed the guest list, went to a final dress fitting. No one noticed her anxiety, that tight knot growing slowly, like a shadow she couldn't ignore. Night came, and with it, the first tear she didn't know the origin of. On Friday, she saw a photo of Adam on Instagram, a view of the hotel, drinks by the pool, and the caption "recharging before the big leap." No mention of her. No hint he was about to get married. That night she dreamed she was at the church and Adam never showed. She woke up drenched in sweat, sheets tangled around her legs, and a stifled scream caught in her throat. Saturday night, while trying to watch a movie to distract herself, her phone rang. It was a video call from C, her best friend from college. C lived in Miami, though by coincidence, they'd grown up on the same street as kids. C was loud, explosive, fiercely loyal. "Is Adam there with you?" Lucretia asked, trying to sound casual. "Listen to me," she said, lowering her voice as she stepped away from what looked like a bar. "I'm working, but I had to call you. Isn't your darling fiancé supposed to be in bed, dreaming about you?" "Why are you asking that?" "Because I just saw him in the VIP section of my bar with his parents and a blonde in a mini dress and heels that look like lethal weapons. And honey, they're not having a family outing." Lucretia froze. "Are you sure?" "Sure. I saw her touch his leg. He kissed her on the cheek." Roberta and Walter were laughing like they were watching a scene from a wedding movie. "It's not normal. Lou, it's not normal." The call cut off due to the noise. Lucretia dropped the phone onto the table. She felt the floor shift an inch beneath her feet. All that love, that trust, had it just shattered like that? She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She stood up, walked to the kitchen, grabbed a glass, filled it with wine, and sat down in the darkness of her living room. There, in the unlit room, with her uneven breathing, a decision took root inside her like a poisonous seed. She wouldn't let them turn her into a victim or a fool. On Sunday morning, with the sun barely filtering through the blinds, she searched online for a private investigator in Miami. It wasn't the first time she had doubted Adam's family, but she had never thought she'd go this far. Even so, something inside her knew she had to. She sent a message, explained her case. And when the man replied quickly, she said yes. Money didn't matter. What was at stake was much bigger than that. As she waited for the first reports, she remembered all the scenes love had silenced. The time Roberta said the tablecloths she chose were tacky, the disapproving look when she mentioned her mother was a retired nurse, the times Adam just shrugged when she needed him to stand up for her. In just 3 days, her view of love began to crack. On Monday afternoon, the first batch of photos arrived, Adam with the blonde, walking through an art gallery. He was smiling. She had her arm wrapped around his. Walter behind them, like a bodyguard. Roberta in front, as if the whole thing was part of a parade she herself had orchestrated. Lucretia's heart didn't break. It hardened. This wasn't about a wedding anymore. Not even about betrayal. It was mockery. A performance planned by a family that had always seen her as a phase in their son's life. That night, the detective confirmed the young woman's name, Catalina. 26 years old. Occasional model. Nothing in her background showed a previous relationship with Adam. But there was a very clear connection to Roberta. They had both attended a charity event hosted by her 3 months earlier. Lucretia printed every image, organized them in a black folder, added emails, dates, locations. Nothing was left to chance. On Tuesday, as the sun disappeared behind the trees in Savannah, Lucretia looked at herself in the mirror and said something she had never dared to admit. Maybe Adam never loved me. He just tolerated me. And then, the poisonous seed bloomed. It wasn't hate. It was something pure. It was clarity. No one who truly loves allows their mother to toy with their partner's dignity. On Wednesday night, she received a message from Adam. "I'll be back tomorrow. Can't wait to see you." She replied only, "I'll be here." But in her mind, she wasn't planning a wedding anymore. She was planning a trial, and no one would walk away unscathed. The story was just beginning. And the first crack had already revealed that, behind the white dress and the altar's promise, there was a truth more painful than any infidelity, being replaced before anyone even told you they didn't want you. Lucretia got up early, even though she had slept barely 3 hours. Her thoughts spun in her mind like a rusty carousel. Images of Adam, the blonde, his hand holding a wine glass while she brushed against him under the table, Roberta's hollow laugh from the other side of the room. Nothing was official yet, nothing said aloud, but the truth was sketched like a shadow on the wall, cast by a candle that could no longer be snuffed out. The air in the apartment felt thick, almost polluted. She had left the black folder open on the table, as if she needed to see it upon waking, to confirm it hadn't been a bad dream. Inside were the first pieces of evidence sent by the detective. Photos with dates, precise locations, clearly focused faces. These weren't stolen moments. They were sharp, almost theatrical scenes where every gesture spoke for itself. In one of the images, Adam held Catalina's chair at a seaside restaurant, while she, dressed in a red gown seemingly made to be noticed, leaned toward him, smiling with the confidence only someone who knows they're winning can possess. In another, he and Catalina strolled through an art gallery, looking at paintings as if they shared their own private world. But the harshest was the one taken at the hotel pool, Catalina, in a bikini, lying on a towel next to Adam, while Roberta, seated next to Walter, pointed at something on her phone and Catalina laughed. The detective had been thorough. In the email accompanying the images, he detailed the activity sequence: breakfast at the hotel at 9:15, visit to a luxury boutique at 10:40, lunch at a seafood restaurant at 1:30 p.m., afternoon by the pool, dinner at a restaurant with live music. There was no room for doubt. Catalina wasn't just a casual guest. She was integrated, not as a friend, as a replacement. Lucretia made coffee, though she didn't want it. The ritual calmed her. As the scent filled the kitchen, she looked once more at the images on her phone. There was a surgical coldness to the way everything had been documented. But that coldness was her shield, her only refuge. Because if she allowed herself to feel, if she opened the floodgates, she knew the current would be unstoppable. Her phone screen vibrated. A new email from the detective. Video attached. She opened it without hesitation. The footage started in the hotel lobby. Adam and Catalina waiting for the elevator. She leaned in, said something in his ear, and he smiled almost nervously. Then, another scene. This time on the rooftop. Catalina bent down to pick up a drink and, in the motion, her arm deliberately brushed against Adam's. He didn't pull away. He just looked down, like someone who doesn't want to give a clear signal, but also doesn't want to close the door. Lucretia paused the video. Her heart was racing, but not from sadness. It was something else. A sharp, internal vibration. It was fury. And beneath that fury, the realization that she had been blind. She had ignored all the signs. Roberta, from the beginning, had never hidden her disdain. But Adam always said the same thing. Don't pay attention to her. She'll come around with time. What matters is that we love each other. A well-told lie, repeated enough times, becomes believable. But when it breaks, the fall is deep. The tension kept her upright. She went through the report. There were names. Catalina Aparicio, 26 years old. Occasional work in advertising campaigns. 2 private social media accounts, but traces of her attending charity events. At one of those events, just 3 months ago, Catalina appeared in a photo hugging Roberta, both with champagne glasses in hand, in a room decorated with golden curtains and over-the-top floral arrangements. That's when it all became clear. Catalina hadn't been a casual encounter. She had been chosen. The phone rang again. This time it was C. "Are you okay?" she asked as soon as Lucretia answered. "What do you think?" There was a short silence on the other end. Then C's voice grew more serious. "I didn't want to tell you before because I had no proof. But now I've confirmed it. Catalina was on the guest list for Roberta's gala. One of those exclusive nights in Coral Gables. She moves in that circle for convenience. Lou, she's not just a pretty woman they met at a bar. This was planned." Lucretia swallowed hard. "You think Adam knew? If he didn't, he's a fool. If he did, it's worse." "I don't know which is worse." "I do," said C firmly. "I'd rather he knew. Because if he didn't, it means he's so easily manipulated that he'll always drag you down with him. And you can't build a life with someone who can't even defend himself from his own mother." Lucretia hung up without answering. She looked at the photos again. The image of Roberta touching Catalina's shoulder, like someone introducing a future daughter-in-law, made her skin crawl. She thought about calling Adam, demanding answers. But she held back. What's the point of talking to someone who doesn't even know he's been exposed? She decided to wait, to let everything play out. Because she knew they'd return confident, believing the show was still on, that the wedding would happen, that their plan was hidden under mojitos, designer dresses, and whispered promises. This wasn't the time to cry. It was the time to look the enemy in the eye. The black folder remained open on the table, but now Lucretia filled it with new evidence: video stills, a copy of the hotel records, an enlarged image of Roberta and Catalina at the event. Then she closed the folder, not to hide it, but to protect it. That folder was her salvation. On Thursday night, just as the clock hit 11:17, she received a message from Adam. Back home. Can I see you tomorrow? I missed you more than I imagined. Lucretia read those words with narrowed eyes. Guilt? Hypocrisy? Shamelessness? She couldn't tell which emotion to identify first. But she knew exactly what to reply. Sure. Coffee at my place. 9 a.m. Short. Direct. No hearts. No sweetness. The night dragged on. Not from anxiety, but from preparation. She rehearsed every sentence in her head. Every pause. Every look. She wouldn't scream. She wouldn't cry. She wouldn't ask for explanations. She would lay the truth bare like unrolling a scroll made of fire. The next morning, the sun was barely coming through the window when Lucretia brewed the bitterest coffee she had. She left the folder on the table, a marker pointing to the first page. She dressed in something neutral. Not too elegant, not too casual. She wanted to look like someone who had already made up her mind. Adam arrived on time. That surprised her. He wore a blue shirt, unbuttoned at the collar, and a face pretending to be calm. I missed you, he said, walking in without waiting for an invitation. Lucretia didn't reply. She pointed at the table. Coffee? Sure. He sat down, took the cup with both hands, noticed the folder, but didn't ask. The tension in the air was obvious, but he seemed determined to ignore it. Until she spoke. Did you have a good time in Miami? Adam nodded, sipping his coffee. Yes, I got some rest. It was just what I needed. And Catalina? Did she rest too? Adam blinked. The cup trembled slightly in his hand. He set it down on the saucer. Catalina? Lucretia pushed the folder toward him. Open it. He did. The first photo was of the pool. Then the boutique. Then the kiss on the cheek. Then the printed video with the transcript. As he flipped through the pages, the color drained from his face. He moved from discomfort to confusion to fear, until he looked up. What is this? Evidence. Of the setup. The charade. Of how your family planned to replace me without telling me. I didn't, he stammered. I didn't know someone. That there were photos. That's what you're worried about? That there are photos. He slammed the folder shut. His expression was a storm of confusion and shame. Nothing happened. I swear. Catalina is just a friend. My mother. Your mother doesn't like me. That I knew. What I didn't know is that you don't respect me either. Adam stood up. He paced the room, hands on his head. It wasn't like that. She insisted I go. She said I needed to think. Think about what? Whether it was worth marrying me. After 3 years? After everything we've built. Lucretia. She cut him off. You sat next to her. You smiled at her. You shared dinner, laughter, even a stroll through the gallery. Are you going to tell me that's respect? He had no answer. At that moment, someone knocked on the door. She opened it without asking. Roberta and Walter walked in like they owned the place. Are we interrupting? Roberta asked, though she didn't wait for an answer. Walter stayed by the door, looking at his phone. Roberta walked into the kitchen as if she lived there. We need to go over the flower arrangements. We can't leave it for the last minute. When she saw the folder on the table and Adam's pale face, she stopped. What's that? Lucretia didn't say a word. She simply watched as Roberta approached and read the first page. Then the second. Then the third. Her face didn't show guilt, only irritation. "Oh, please," she said. "You're overreacting. This isn't what you think it is." Lucretia crossed her arms. "It's not what I think? Because it looks exactly like what it is, an ambush. A replacement. A betrayal." Roberta sighed. She turned to Adam. "Make her see reason. This doesn't have to ruin the wedding." Adam said nothing. His silence was the hardest blow. And in that silence, Lucretia knew there was no turning back. She had uncovered the truth. And now she was the one in control. Because dignity, even when bruised, is never truly lost. It simply waits for the right moment to roar. And that moment had come. The silence was so heavy it could be felt in the bones, as if the air had frozen the very instant Roberta saw the folder on the table and realized she no longer controlled the story. Lucretia, standing by the back of one of the chairs, didn't look away for a second. There was no tremble in her voice, no tears held back. Only the calm of someone who had already hit bottom and decided to rise alone. Roberta closed the folder slowly, as if each image weighed down her fingers. Her lips twisted into a sneer of fake disdain. "This doesn't change anything," she said, like someone speaking to a spoiled child. "It's normal to meet people before a wedding. Nothing in here proves anything inappropriate happened." Adam, still in shock, stood by the window. His face was pale, as if he had suddenly realized his entire life had been built on ruins. He had gone through the photos again and again, as if searching for a kinder version of events. But the images didn't lie. His mother laughing with Catalina, his father approving with silence, Catalina seeking physical contact, him accepting it. It was all there. Recorded. Raw. Irrefutable. "Do you want me to repeat what you just saw?" Lucretia asked, her voice dangerously calm. "Or would you rather we put the video on the TV and all watch it together?" Roberta turned to her, arms crossed. "Don't be dramatic. You're acting like a victim when all you are is a fiancé with insecurities. That's all." Walter, until then absorbed in his phone, looked up. "Let's not make this a tragedy," he said in a deep voice. "There's still time to adjust course. Everything can still be fixed. This conversation doesn't have to leave this room." Lucretia let out a laugh with no trace of joy. She walked slowly to the kitchen, poured herself more coffee, and sat back down without losing her composure. "Adjust course," she repeated. "Is that what you call it? Because from where I'm standing, your course was to get rid of me without telling me. To swap brides like changing the dinner menu. And on top of that, to show up here like nothing happened, with your list of flowers and seating charts, like I was just another variable in your strategy board." Adam stepped forward, trying to intervene, but she raised a hand to stop him. "No, you don't get to speak yet. I'm waiting for your mother to explain why she did this." With full sentences, and looking me in the eye. Roberta didn't flinch. She walked slowly to the table and sat down across from Lucretia. Her movements were elegant, calculated, as if even in disgrace, her priority was to maintain her composure. "I'll be honest with you," she began. "You're not what we expected for Adam. My son deserves a life that matches his potential. A partner who lifts him up, not someone who drags him into a world of mediocrity." Lucretia didn't even blink. "Mediocrity," she said, in the softest voice of the night. "I've been working since I was 20. I paid for every cent of my education. I've designed spaces you probably couldn't even afford to visit without a press pass. And still, I sat at your table, smiled at you, accepted your disdain, because I believed your son's love was worth more than your poison." Roberta leaned in. "It's not my fault you confuse tolerance with acceptance. Putting up with you is not the same as loving you." Adam turned sharply. "Mom, please." She ignored him. "And Catalina," she continued, with a crooked smile. "Catalina understands what it means to live at this level. She knows how to behave. She doesn't make scenes. She doesn't answer with sarcasm. And she looked at Lucretia with a hint of disgust, brag about coming from nothing, as if it were some kind of achievement." Walter sighed, annoyed by the drama. "That's enough," he growled. "This isn't a competition between women. It was just a test." Nothing happened. There was no infidelity. Lucretia nodded. "A test? So this was an exam." "We call it reality," Roberta corrected. "Because marriage isn't a fairy tale, dear. It's an investment. And you weren't profitable." Adam walked to the table and finally spoke. "Mom, that's enough. I had no idea Catalina was going to be on that trip. You told me it was a family getaway. That's all." Roberta looked at him with disdain. "Do you really expect me to believe you didn't enjoy having her around?" she asked. "Because I didn't see you pushing her away. I didn't see you pulling back." He had no response. Lucretia stood up. She felt like she was walking on broken glass, but each step made her stronger. "And you, Adam?" she asked, looking him straight in the eye. "At what point did you think all of this was okay? When you laughed at her jokes? When you walked with her arm in arm through the gallery? When you didn't text me for 3 days?" He lowered his head. "I just wanted to avoid conflicts. To keep the peace." "Peace?" Lucretia laughed bitterly. "Do you know what it takes to keep the peace with someone who lets her mother try to replace me without even blinking?" Roberta, unshaken, stood up. "This conversation is pointless. Nothing is lost yet. We can move forward. You can move forward if you accept your place. That of a decorative wife. The one who smiles in photos. The one who doesn't ask uncomfortable questions." Lucretia felt her blood boiling. "Do you think I want to marry someone who needs permission to respect me?" Walter cleared his throat. "What you want or don't want is irrelevant. The wedding is paid for. The guests are confirmed. This conversation won't change contracts. We can settle this privately." She stared at him so intensely that Walter was forced to look down. "It's no longer private. Now it's personal. And I won't be silent. I won't be just another piece on their chessboard. I won't become a shadow so their sun can shine brighter. I'm not even sure he wants to shine. Maybe he just wants to be pushed, directed, held." Adam wanted to respond, but his words died in his throat. He had no defense. He was only scared. Scared of losing his mother, his fiancée, the perfect image he had built. Scared of being alone, and in that fear, he chose silence. Again, Roberta approached, adjusted his shirt collar with a gesture almost maternal, but full of dominance. "You don't have to say anything," she whispered. "We'll fix this." As always. But Lucretia was no longer the same. There was no pleading in her eyes. Only resolve. "I do have something more to say," she said firmly. "I have videos. Audios. Recordings where your mother is heard telling Catalina that when this wedding falls apart, she and you could start their story. I have records of expenses, flight changes, reservations paid under your mother's and Catalina's names. And best of all, I have an audience." Roberta turned, bewildered. "What are you saying?" Lucretia took out her phone, turned it on, and showed the screen. "I'm saying that if you think you can drag me into shame, ridicule, invisibility, you picked the wrong woman. I'm not going to hide. I'm going to tell the story. Fully. And let everyone take responsibility." Walter took a step forward, truly alarmed for the first time. "Do you plan to destroy us?" She shook her head. "You destroyed yourselves. I'm just going to hold up the mirror." Silence returned. This time it was intense. It was final. Roberta grabbed her purse, adjusted her coat, and walked toward the door. Before leaving, she turned to Lucretia. "You're more dangerous than you look. And you're weaker than you pretend," Lucretia replied. The door closed. Adam stood there, unsure whether to stay or leave. Lucretia approached, looked at him one last time. "Do you want to know what the worst part of all this is?" He didn't answer. "That I truly loved you. With every part of me. And you only loved the idea of having someone who wouldn't contradict you." He opened his mouth, but Lucretia waved him off. "Don't say anything. I don't want to hear you anymore. This is my story now. And I'll tell it my way." Adam left without looking back. That night, Lucretia slept alone. But for the first time in a long time, she slept in peace. Because the truth no longer weighed on her throat. It was no longer a secret hidden in photos. Now it was a promise. A battle to come. And in that battle, she was no longer afraid. The morning after the confrontation brought no relief. It brought determination. Lucretia woke up with heavy eyelids, but a clear mind. Every word from Roberta, every silence from Adam, every condescending look still echoed inside her. She sat on the bed and promised herself something she had never said so firmly before. This story will not end with them winning. She grabbed her phone. She had 5 missed calls from C and a message that said, "Call me." Now, it's about her. She dialed without thinking, her heart pounding. C's voice came through the line like lightning. "Lou, the woman from hell is talking. Catalina. She's been at the bar all night with a friend, bragging about what she did. I have witnesses. Recordings. She said your wedding was just a formality, that they were paying her to get close to Adam and then introduce her as his real fiancé. She's proud. Like she won something." Lucretia closed her eyes. Not out of surprise, but because she was starting to put all the pieces together. There was no room left for doubt. The only question was how much of that Adam had allowed, how much dignity he had sacrificed to keep being his mother's obedient boy. "Did she say you hired her?" Lucretia asked in a faint voice. "Of course," C replied. "Roberta." She said it like it was nothing unusual. According to her, Roberta offered trips, clothes, a bit of media exposure, promises of fashion events, and if everything went well, even the possibility of living with Adam. All in exchange for breaking the engagement with class. Lucretia didn't answer right away. She pressed her forehead against the wall and felt the cold seep through her skin. Her throat burned. Not with pain. With helplessness. With disgust. C didn't wait for her reaction. "I'm going to send you the audios. Listen to them. You can't doubt anything anymore." The first audio file arrived a minute later. And there was Catalina, laughing with a voice full of vanity, saying, "It wasn't that hard to seduce Adam. The tricky part was not making it obvious to the hotel camera." In another clip, she boasted about how quickly Roberta had taken her in as the future daughter-in-law, as if Lucretia had never existed. She even mentioned that, if everything went as planned, Roberta already had a trip to Italy booked with her and Adam after the transition. Lucretia clenched the phone so hard her palm hurt. Every word was a knife, but not one that hurt her. It was a weapon sharpening her resolve. Minutes later, she put on a coat, grabbed the folder with the documents, and left without looking back. She called Roberta from the car. A direct call. Short. No protocol. "I need to see you. Now. You pick the place. But it has to be today." The response was an address sent by message. Roberta's house on the outskirts, where she usually hosted private dinners with her acquaintances. Lucretia arrived 40 minutes later. The door was already open. They were waiting for her. As if Roberta knew she would come with fire on her tongue. She entered with firm steps. The decor was as pretentious as she remembered. Fake marble, ostentatious chandeliers, a gallery of family portraits that looked like they came from a magazine where sincerity was forbidden. Roberta waited for her in the living room, sitting with a glass of white wine. "Well, what spirit? I thought you'd take a couple of days to process everything." Lucretia dropped the folder on the table with a sharp thud. Roberta didn't flinch. "How much did you pay her to destroy my life?" Roberta smiled without moving a muscle more than necessary. "Are you talking about Catalina?" "I'm talking about your puppet. The woman you turned into bait. How much did you give her to replace me? How much is a broken engagement worth to you?" Roberta poured herself more wine. Her tone didn't change. "We gave her an incentive. Some gifts. Access to certain circles. Nothing illegal." Lucretia looked at her in disbelief. "Nothing illegal? Is that what you think? Paying a woman to seduce your son days before his wedding? Inviting her on a family trip? Giving her promises in exchange for my place?" Roberta shrugged. Most women do the same, just without intermediaries. Lucretia stepped closer. Her voice lowered. You have no idea what you've just done. You didn't just kill a wedding. You killed your son's image. Do you really think anyone will respect him when they know his mother chose a mistress for him? The image can be rebuilt, Roberta said coldly. The status too. What can't be recovered is lost time. And you, dear, were a mistake in his timeline. Lucretia felt the blow like a slap. She didn't answer. Not yet. And Adam, she asked then. Did he know? Did he help you? Roberta took her time answering. When she did, it was with a coldness that cut to the bone. He didn't need to know. He just had to be open to new possibilities. And he was. Lucretia closed her eyes, forced herself to breathe. You understand, right? She finally said. That I won't leave this like this. That I'm going to tell everything. That I have the audios. That Catalina isn't as loyal as you thought. Roberta laughed, a brief, humorless sound. And who's going to believe you? You're the jilted one. The abandoned one. No one sides with the broken bride. You're the cliché. And no one wants to be part of the cliché. Lucretia took a step closer. I'm going to become the most powerful cliché you've ever seen. And when this blows up, when your circles find out what you did, there won't be a chandelier or catering that can get back the respect you pretended to have. Roberta stood up, her eyes shining with rage. You don't know who you're dealing with. You don't either. When Lucretia left that house, she didn't feel fear. She felt fire. And that kind of certainty that only comes after the deepest betrayal. That very night, Adam came looking for her. He knocked on the door like someone who no longer has a home. She looked at him from the threshold. She didn't let him in. Did you know they sold you out? She asked bluntly. He frowned. What? Catalina. Your mother. The trip. It was all an operation. She admits it. Catalina admits it. I have recordings, photos, and best of all, witnesses. Did you know? He looked at her with eyes full of pain that seemed real. But that was no longer enough. I didn't know. I swear. They told me she was a family friend. That she happened to meet us by chance. And you believe that? With all the gestures? With the insinuations? With your mother praising her like she was the Virgin Mary? Did you really think it was a coincidence? Adam swallowed hard. He had no answers. You allowed it, she whispered. You don't have to have planned it. It was enough that you allowed it. He looked down. He felt dirty, manipulated. A pawn that never even knew it was one. I was wrong, he said. I didn't know how to stop it. Everything happened so fast. My mother has had me tied up forever. She makes me feel like I owe her everything. And now you realize you lost the one thing you couldn't buy, Lucretia said. My respect. He reached out his hand. He wanted to touch her. Lou, please. She stepped back. Don't call me that. That name doesn't belong to you anymore. Adam finally understood that he had lost her. And not just her. He lost the idea of himself that he had held onto with so much effort. He discovered, in the reflection of his own decisions, a small man. Dependent. Fragile. A child in an adult's body. A pawn on his mother's chessboard. As he walked away down the street, he felt something inside break. But that break wasn't new. It had only become visible. Lucretia closed the door. Not with sadness. With peace. Because now she knew the whole truth. And with the truth came strength. Catalina wasn't the problem. She was the symptom. The real virus was power disguised as family, obedience disguised as love, and fear disguised as loyalty. That night, Lucretia didn't sleep, but not out of anguish. She stayed awake planning, because her story wasn't over yet, and the next move was going to be public and final. 2 days later, the event hall smelled of white flowers and freshly varnished wood. Outside, the wind swayed the garlands still hanging from the arch where, in theory, Lucretia and Adam were supposed to promise eternal love. Inside, the venue's technicians moved swiftly, installing the screen Lucretia had requested at the last minute. No one questioned the urgency. Money wasn't an issue, and her calm, firm voice left no room for doubt. Tina, her maid of honor and silent confidant since everything blew up, accompanied her with steady steps. She said nothing, but her gaze was a refuge. Lucretia had dressed in a plain white outfit. No lace, no shiny fabrics. Just clean elegance. As if her presence was an answer to everything that had been taken from her. At exactly 11, Walter was the first to arrive. He entered like he owned the place, though his eyes moved cautiously. Behind him came Roberta, wrapped in a faux fur coat, holding her purse with the confidence of someone who believes everything can be controlled with the tone of her voice. Adam arrived minutes later, dressed casually, as if refusing to take the moment seriously. He stopped when he saw Lucretia at the front, near the projector, and his eyes revealed a mix of shame and nostalgia. He didn't greet her. She didn't need it. And finally, Catalina appeared. She crossed the door as if attending an awards ceremony. A short, tight white dress, lips painted bright red. She walked to one of the tables and sat down as if she already knew everything revolved around her. Lucretia watched them all without showing a hint of weakness. She took the projector remote, activated the first file, and turned around just as the first image filled the screen. The audience, small but powerful, was made up of the traitors. The first slide showed Adam and Catalina walking through an art gallery in Miami, their bodies leaning toward each other. Then, images of the restaurant, the pool, the hotel, Roberta laughing while Catalina talked to Walter. All tied together with smooth transitions, like a promotional video of a family trip. Except that family didn't include the fiancé. No one spoke. They didn't even breathe heavily. Then Lucretia turned on the audio. A leaked clip by C, recorded in the bar where Catalina had been too honest. Catalina's unmistakable voice floated through the room. Roberta told me that if I got close enough to Adam, the rest would come on its own. That you were just a phase. That she needed a woman with class, with image. And that after the show, I would have what she promised me, a place. A name. A life with him. Walter shifted in his seat. Roberta, for the first time, swallowed hard. Adam looked down at the floor. Catalina didn't flinch. Lucretia then stepped forward, paused the video, and looked at them. Any explanation? Anything you want to say? The silence was like a whip. Doesn't that seem enough to you? She insisted. Seeing your mother offer my place to another woman? Hearing that same woman brag about her role in the plan? Roberta stood up. This is ridiculous. You took everything out of context. Catalina shrugged, unconcerned. No, you didn't. It's all true. I said it. You offered it to me. And you know what, Roberta, if you're going to throw me under the bus, at least admit I was useful. Lucretia raised an eyebrow. Did she offer you anything besides fame? Catalina smiled with a calm that was unsettling. Yes, secrets. Things Roberta doesn't want anyone to know. I'm not just a mediocre model with a good waistline. Roberta used me because she knew I had things to lose if I talked. Roberta went pale. Walter turned toward her, frowning. What is she talking about? Catalina crossed her legs. I'm telling you, Walter, because it seems your wife hasn't told you everything. The Donors Club she organizes dinners for, those charity events she promotes, they're not as clean as they seem. Money laundering, fake donations, ghost accounts. I was there. I saw things. I have screenshots, photos. And if I leave this place with even one scratch on my reputation, I become a federal informant. Roberta stepped forward, her eyes bloodshot with rage. Shut up. Catalina stood up slowly. You do it. Lucretia watched without blinking. The scene was falling apart in front of her like a sandcastle swallowed by the tide. Roberta was no longer the impenetrable woman. She was a desperate mother with dirty hands. Walter, stunned, was starting to realize his marriage was a facade built on interests and betrayals. Adam finally stood up. He approached Lucretia with tired eyes. "This doesn't have to go on. We can end this peacefully. You go your way, I'll go mine. No one has to make a scandal." She stared at him for a long moment. "You know what's the saddest part? That at no point in this story was I your priority. You weren't the one who wanted to fix anything. You weren't the one who stopped your mother. You're only reacting now because everything came to light. Not out of love, out of shame." He lowered his head. There was no defense possible. Lucretia walked to the central table, gathered her papers, her laptop, and took a deep breath. "This is the last day you'll see me. From now on, everything that happens will be my decision. You won't manipulate me again. You won't silence me. And if any of you dare to try to destroy me, remember that I have nothing to lose. You do." Walter stood up, still processing Catalina's threat. "This can't get out of here." Catalina laughed. "Too late. You don't know how many copies I have of everything, just in case someone has an accident." Roberta grabbed her purse. Her pride was shattered, her plan dismantled, her reputation hanging by a thread as thin as her control. Adam tried to say something more, but Lucretia had already spun on her heels. Tina stood up too. She walked behind her without looking back. When they crossed the event hall door, the air hit their faces with a liberating force. Outside on the street, Tina sighed. "I'd never seen anything like that. It was perfect." Lucretia looked at her calmly. It wasn't revenge. It was the truth. And sometimes, the truth is all that's left when everything else burns. That night, Lucretia didn't cry. Nor did she celebrate. She just sat on her balcony with a glass of wine and the sound of silence as her ally. The war was over. But the best was yet to come. Because now, finally, she was free. And no one would ever take that away from her again. Social media burned like a gasoline storm. The event hall where everything had fallen apart witnessed not only the collapse of a wedding, but also the start of a public downfall no one could stop. C, with her sharpness and sense of justice, had leaked the audios, photos, and documents to a local journalist. Not for revenge, but out of respect for a truth that deserved to be revealed. The first post appeared in the early hours of the next day, an article titled "The Rejected Bride Who Exposed a High Society Farce." It included the video of Roberta offering Catalina a life with Adam, along with a detailed narration of the plot. The journalist, aware of the emotional weight, used terms like premeditated betrayal, family manipulation, and emotional bribery. The story spread like a virus, jumping from Facebook groups to Twitter, from Twitter to regional news channels. In less than 24 hours, Savannah was no longer talking about a wedding. They were talking about a silent war won with dignity. Roberta was the first to feel the consequences. Invitations to formal dinners stopped arriving. The golf club she attended with her usual superiority suspended her membership for image reasons. One of her closest friends posted a sharp comment, "I always knew Roberta played with fire. I just didn't imagine she would drag her own son into it." Walter, pressured by unwanted attention and accumulated tension, decided to walk away. He left with a woman much younger than Roberta, a former employee of his company, leaving behind the marital facade he had maintained for decades. His departure was not silent. He made it public in an interview with a martyr tone, claiming that lack of boundaries had corrupted his wife's heart. Catalina tried to resist. During the first hours of the scandal, she posted a series of photos on her social media alongside Adam. In one, they appeared at a restaurant tagged "engaged." In another, she showed an empty jewelry box, assuring that happy news was coming soon. But truth speaks the language that needs no explanation. Comments started to turn cruel. Phrases like "how much did you get paid to destroy a woman?" and "the paid mistress who wanted to be queen" multiplied. The pressure crushed her. She closed her accounts, deactivated her number, and disappeared from the public scene. No one heard from her again. At least not for a while. Adam, for his part, became an echo of himself. He didn't work. He didn't go out. He spent his days in the apartment he once shared with Lucretia, staring at the walls as if seeking answers. Guilt gnawed silently at him, but it was his body that screamed first. Tremors in his hands. Constant fatigue. Episodes of confusion. He went to the doctor thinking it was anxiety, stress, the aftermath of losing everything. But tests revealed something far more devastating. Adam had inherited a genetic disease from his father, something Roberta had known about for years. A progressive neuromuscular degeneration. Not immediately fatal, but devastating. They kept it a secret, hoping it would never awaken. Roberta thought she could avoid it by controlling his environment, choosing wives, manipulating emotions. But the body does not obey lies. When Adam received the diagnosis, he wanted to call her, ask for explanations, hold her like the lost child he always was. But Roberta no longer answered. She had fallen into a silent depression. She had shut herself inside her house, drawn the curtains, and let the world spin without her. Her arrogance had no escape in the mirror of truth. What was once a woman of impeccable posture was now nothing more than a shadow walking in a silk robe through halls where no one knocked anymore. Meanwhile, Lucretia had chosen silence as her best revenge. She gave no interviews, posted no hints, didn't respond to the hundreds of messages of support from strangers. She simply returned to work, reorganized her design studio, allowed herself the luxury of walking through the city without thinking about flowers, cakes, or seating charts. She began sleeping with the windows open. And most importantly, she started recognizing herself without anger. It was during one of those new mornings, with the sun entering like a respectful visitor, that she received an unexpected email. It had no subject, just a sender, Catalina de Aparicio01@gmail.com. The message was short. Not a single word of apology. I need help. Not for me. For my daughter. I have no one. I don't want her to pay for my mistake. Please. Lucretia hesitated. Not because she held a grudge, but because she knew the limits of her compassion. Yet something about that final line moved her. The image of a little girl paying for a desperate mother's mistakes stabbed into her soul like a needle. She investigated on her own. C helped. Catalina had a 7-year-old daughter. She was born with a chronic respiratory condition that required costly treatments. She had kept it hidden from the public, from her social networks, even from Roberta. Lucretia picked up the phone. She called the best pediatric center in the city. She used a pseudonym, asked for an evaluation, sent money through a third party. She wasn't seeking recognition. She just wanted someone, amid the disaster, to come out unscathed. Catalina never responded, never said thank you. But weeks later, Lucretia learned the girl was receiving treatment. That was enough. Adam tried to see her. Twice. The first time, he showed up at her studio. She didn't open the door. The second, he sent her a handwritten letter. It was sincere, heartbreaking. He admitted his cowardice, acknowledged he was never a whole man, said he now understood what he had lost, and that he wasn't asking for a second chance, only forgiveness. She didn't respond, not because she didn't feel it, but because she understood there are wounds that don't heal with letters. There are mistakes that aren't washed away with tears. C, reading the letter, muttered angrily. This man is broken. Lucretia nodded. And I'm no longer the woman who picks up the pieces. Life began to rearrange itself. Not perfectly, but sincerely. Lucretia became known for more than a broken wedding. She was invited to talks, conferences on emotional resilience, female empowerment. Her story inspired many women to break free from destructive commitments, to choose truth over appearances. She became a symbol, not of victimhood, but of resistance. Meanwhile, Roberta lived like a ghost. The women who once surrounded her now spoke of her as a warning. The one who tried to replace her daughter-in-law and ended up losing her son. The last name that once opened doors now created distance. And her greatest punishment was not public rejection. It was the certainty that, in trying to create a perfect lineage, she destroyed her legacy. News about Adam's illness soon spread. The media treated him with compassion. Some tried to turn him into a martyr. But people don't forget. The truth doesn't change because the body gets sick. Many felt pity. Few offered comfort. Because pain doesn't erase betrayal. It only wraps it in melancholy. One night, long after, Lucretia looked at the sky from her balcony and felt something unexpected. Peace. Not joy, not euphoria. Just that calm that comes when the soul is no longer at war. She thought of Catalina, the little girl, Adam, Roberta walking alone through her empty mansion. And for the first time, she didn't feel anger. She felt compassion, because she understood that some people don't choose the harm they cause. They repeat it. They inherit it. They wear it like a second skin. Lucretia closed her eyes, and she was grateful to be free of it. Free from a story that could have buried her, but instead made her reborn. Because sometimes, the price of ambition isn't paid by the one who carries it out. It's paid by the one who refuses to become it. And that was her greatest victory. The air smelled of vanilla and freedom. There were no white flowers, no velvet carpet, no arches decorated with intertwined names. Only warm lights hung in makeshift garlands, half-filled wine glasses, and the echo of honest laughter floating throughout the room. It was the date Lucretia was supposed to get married. The calendar marked the day she once dreamed of as sacred. And yet, there was no dress, no vows, no fragile promises. There was something better. A celebration of life. Tina had convinced her. You're not going to cry between sheets. You're not going to hold a funeral for what set you free. We're going to celebrate you. Like you celebrate what wasn't broken, but what was rebuilt stronger. At first, Lucretia hesitated. She didn't know if her soul had room for so much emotional exposure. But in the end, she agreed. And she didn't regret it. The room where they gathered that night was smaller than the one reserved for the wedding. More intimate. More sincere. There were no round tables or centerpieces. Just cushions, blankets on the floor, dim lights, and a playlist of songs that didn't talk about eternal love, but survival. The original cake, the one ordered with so much detail, was taken out of the freezer, placed in the center of a low table, and decorated with a single candle. Someone wrote on its surface, in white frosting, the word freedom. Lucretia didn't know who did it, but she smiled when she saw it. The guests were few. The real ones. The ones who hadn't run when the story got uncomfortable. See Tina, her design boss, a neighbor who always lent her sugar and never asked why she cried in the elevator. People who had seen her at her worst and still hugged her like she was the best. Music played from an old speaker. Tina was the first to grab the karaoke mic and sing, Delightfully Awkward, a song from the 90s. C followed with a ranchera, making everyone laugh with his dramatic exaggeration. Then everyone loudly sang a pop ballad with the wrong lyrics. Lucretia watched, absorbed every moment. She didn't sing. Not yet. She just laughed. And inside, she felt something healing. Something finally finished breaking to let light in. Later, when the glasses were no longer being counted and fatigue began to embrace their bodies, Tina raised her glass and called for silence. I just want to say something, she began, her voice broken by wine and emotion. This woman you see here, this woman didn't just save herself. She saved us all. Because she taught us that saying no is also an act of love. And sometimes, the bravest thing isn't to stick with the plan, but to break everything down and rewrite yourself from scratch. Everyone applauded. Lucretia lowered her head. Tears came, but not from sadness. From relief. At midnight, they brought out the cake. Lucretia took the knife, plunged it in without ceremony, and cut the first slice. No one asked for the usual toast. Instead, she said, to the endings that save us. And everyone raised their glasses. Hours later, when the room was half empty and the music had been replaced by contented sighs, Tina handed Lucretia a white envelope. It had no name written on it, only an unidentified seal. Lucretia looked at it curiously, then calmly opened it. Inside was a letter. She recognized the handwriting instantly. Lucretia, I don't expect you to read this with compassion. I just want you to read it. Because there are things I didn't know how to say when I should have, and now I know there's no going back. I was never brave. Neither with you, nor with myself. I grew up believing that pleasing my mother was a way to love. And now I understand I was only running away from myself. I never had your strength. That strength that made me fall in love with you, and the same one that ended up pushing me away. Because while you defended yourself, I hid. I regret not knowing how to protect you. I regret being part of the plan, even if it was by omission. I've been diagnosed with ALS. I don't write well anymore. This letter took me days. But I needed you to know that when everything collapsed, the only real thing left in my life was you. I don't want you to forgive me. I just want you to live without burden. To not carry my guilt with you. Because you didn't lose. You freed yourself. I was the one who got trapped. If you ever look at me again, let it be without hatred. Because even in the midst of my cowardice, I loved you. In my own way. Twisted. Insufficient. But real. Adam. Lucretia clutched the paper between her fingers. She didn't cry. She just took a deep breath. Tina came closer, read part of the letter over her shoulder, and said softly, "Are you okay?" She nodded. "He's not a bad person," she said. "He just never knew how to be good without help. And the help he had destroyed him." She put the letter away, not to treasure it, but to close that chapter. The following weeks slipped by unhurriedly. Lucretia's story stopped being viral gossip and became a silent legend. An example some shared at their meetings, workshops, and chats among friends. The woman who saved herself by saying no. Lucretia went back to work stronger than ever. She dedicated herself to community projects. She taught design to women coming out of toxic relationships. She traveled, walked more, dreamed differently. One Saturday morning, while walking through a local fair, she stopped in front of a toy crown stand. A little girl was crying because she had dropped hers. Lucretia crouched down, picked it up, and gently placed it back on her head. "Is this better?" she asked. The girl nodded, still with tears. "You're like a princess," the girl said. Lucretia smiled. "No, I'm something better. I'm free." And as the girl ran off to show her crown to her mother, Lucretia looked up at the sky. She wasn't searching for signs or promises. She was just grateful. Because there is one kind of love that saves and another that destroys. But the only one that never abandons you is the love for yourself. And that she had chosen. Forever. If you liked this story, I invite you to leave a comment telling me how it made you feel. And if you've ever been through a similar betrayal, I'd love for you to share your valuable opinion. Remember to tell me which city you're watching this video from. I'd be honored if you give me a like, share the video with a friend or family member, and subscribe to the channel. Don't miss the next amazing story coming to your screen right now. We have entertainment guaranteed exclusively for you. See you in the next video.